surplus, right, and put it into public housing. In a meeting I was in with Tyrone Garrett, we were talking to him about, I think we need to have something similar to what we did with the public schools, right, which is invest a couple $1 billion in repairs in a massive infrastructure, public infrastructure project, financed by bonds and, all the different mechanisms that we have as a city. And what Garrett said was the housing authority needs to be self-sufficient, that we cannot rely on, just like they can't rely on federal appropriations at this time because they're not getting enough money. They can't rely on the local government either, that what the local government has given them thus far is so little compared to what they need, and it took so much to get it that they've kind of written off the possibility. So I think then it becomes about us. What kind of movement will we build to demand that the city make that type of investment in public housing? And we know that there's a lot of people, and I'm talking even housing advocates, who have treated public housing residents as second-class citizens. Public housing has not even been on the affordable housing agenda for very long, right? It's more recent, in recent years that started to grow. So, that's what we will be up against. There's a lot of people who buy into this idea that poor people living near each other is bad, that these communities need to be broken up, that we need to deconcentrate poverty, that it's better for people to live near wealthier people. People like Anthony Williams, his comment about, oh, it's good to when young people are on the bus with wealthier people and they see them, give them a good role model. Like, this is the attitude that people have, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit further in the agenda about, one, how this relates to the comprehensive plan, because we're going to get to the point soon where there will be changes made per chapter pertaining to neighborhoods. These properties are in neighborhoods. So what will your community do to say, we want build first for this property, we want, whatever, other protections, right? And then also, we're also going to be talking about the mayor's doing all these things around her housing goals, right? You heard the 36,000 number. Now there's a 320,000. Nobody's talking about public housing within those numbers, right? We just heard Caitlin say they're defining affordable as $2,500 a month. The median rent paid by public housing residents is about $250 per month. Now some pay $1,000, some pay $50, but the median is about $250, and that's 30% of their income, right? So that's, again, this is about what are we going to do, and in terms of the outreach that our campaign has been doing, we've door knocked on every property on that list, and we're going to continue to do that. But there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of confusion. These things will go 5, 10 years, we already know, right? We've been Berry Farm 8 years already, and not one unit has been built yet, right? So this is a long-term commitment that we're making. I'm going to allow a couple more questions, and then,
I was just, for me, there's an interesting disconnect between local Democrats and the national debates we're seeing right now with the national Democrats. When you see Bernie and Warren, and even to some extent Biden talking about we want to fund public housing, here local Democrats are turning towards the neoliberal kind of Republican approach to privatization. And that's, to me, I think is a big thing we need to fight in this. Once things go private, we're not getting them back. And the private landlords are people who have no connection to the people that will be on that land. Like, they are from other places, they're wealthy, there's just not a real connection. And it's now their land. So they can set screenings and all of this and say, no, you can't come on this land. Public housing is important because it is the last safety net before homelessness. And in a city with the amount of homelessness we got, we cannot be getting rid of public housing. So I think we do have a duty to challenge our council. If they can fund baseball at $1 billion, they can fund soccer at $300 million, basketball at $100 million, the $50 million jumbotron in a Verizon Center. Why can't we fund public housing?
Just to give you a perspective of where the money is, the latest data is now available for the federal tax cut that people in D.C. earning over $200,000 will get in 2020. Nearly $600 million. Last year it was $700 million. There is a tax base, and this is just their federal tax cut, that we can have the opportunity, if we generate the political will in the council, for them to raise a DC income tax rate on these same residents and recover this for a dedicated stream for public housing, as well as all other essential programs that are underfunded. But I will share this in the next few months, what this is about. This is being considered by Fair Budget Coalition, and it came up in yesterday's meeting of the Fair Taxes and Public Deals working group. And Amber Harding actually brought up this from Washington Legal Clinic. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Okay, I know always my answers.
Yeah, let me
always
show
on track.
Louder,
But
please.
this is the
Louder.
way that I think, okay? And I'm trying to say they gonna tear down all of these affordable and do some new projects and new homes and stuff. But when is senior citizens, they ever gonna build, say, in the Washington metropolitan area, I'll say out Branch Avenue, when are they ever gonna build any affordable homes for them? And you know, like, public housing for them, that when they look up, they think they got the building to themselves. Here come these young people running them out of it, they can't sleep at night and all that. You'd be surprised. When are they gonna ever give them the benefit of that? That they can have some place, that they don't have to get the buildings, place all tore up and all this, and people coming in at night, blowing horns and music jumping. When are they gonna look out for them? They don't do it.
Yeah, good point.
I think
That don't
whoever
make
did
sense.
this is very inconsiderate and clearly couldn't have been homeless themselves here in Washington.
That's right.
In time, and I am Southern, I'm from South Carolina, but I was born here in Washington. And I've only been here since 2016. When I came in here, I was homeless myself. I went through the shelter program. Okay, if it hadn't been for the legal partnership for homeless families, the clinic of homeless families, I would not be in my apartment or my unit right now. You know, and there's people that have been in those shelters for over 5 or 6 years. How do you spend 5 years in a shelter? You don't get help getting out. They don't give you resources. They tell you, they give you that little funky record rehousing voucher. You know what I'm saying? They don't tell you about all these other housing programs. You know what I'm saying, that you qualify. I qualify because I'm disabled. I have lupus and other health issues and stuff. So, I mean, you're generally taking away housing from people who otherwise they don't have nowhere else to go. They hide these people in hotels still. The hotel on Newburgh Avenue is full of people, full of families with 3 or 4. They can't find a unit because they may have 4 kids or 5 kids, and they gotta have a bedroom for every child. If you got 2, a boy and a girl, you can't put a boy and a girl in the same room. You know what I'm saying? So you need a 3-bedroom unit. So you telling me they gonna come and build all these 1-bedrooms for who? You know what I'm saying? People have kids. We still procreate in this lifetime. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, let's see real quick. And then
Okay,
I'm gonna find out where Mr. Garrett lives. And that's on the St. Passport for self-defense. We'll pay him a little bit. Right, Kyle? All right.
And then the gentleman. Finish
Go
up.
ahead.
Okay, I wanted to say one thing. Knock on wood, I've been blessed. I have never lived in a senior citizen. I have never really lived in an apartment building all my life. You know, I was brought up by foster home, foster parents, and that taught me a lot. That taught me to be independent. I have never been in, you know, like, in other words, I live right here in this neighborhood, right down the street. I can't get to no free nothing. I can't get nothing. I can't get no phone. I can't get none of that. I thank God for that. But then you got other people that need places that can't even get, you know, like you say, a voucher. I can't even get a voucher. for anything.
But that's what they do in the shelters. They give you all a
Right.
rapid rehousing voucher. That's only good for 1 year.
Right.
And then when you go and apply at these so-called affordable places or whatever, you gotta be able to make that money. You know, you coming in a shelter with no job, you getting in the jail, you don't have no job, you homeless, you on the street, but you gotta be able to qualify for the housing in order to get housed with a rapid rehousing voucher. So what's this do
I'm
that
gonna
pay?
have to cut you off just because we have a number of things we want to still get to, and we have one more question in the back.
So from what I'm hearing so far, this nefarious system's budget is more interested in spending that budget to build jails, to build prisons, and we teach our children to get a good education, to get a good job instead of creating a job, because getting one is not worth it.
That's right.
You see, so now Al, we tell them, go to school, stay out of trouble, get a good education, you can be successful. Yeah, if those doors open for you, but those doors don't open for everybody.
Okay, I want to thank Kenny for their presentation. The whole presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Otten. I'm with DC for Reasonable Development, and we have been working with the coalition to really kind of grapple with this comprehensive plan. This is a 1,000-page document, right? The Office of Planning wants to amend it, okay? And they've been going through this process. We kind of forged this coalition around this process, and we've been working on it for 2 years now. See, it's been a long campaign. It kind of came to a head in July with the first vote of the framework element. Was that July? It was July, right? Yeah, it was like the last session of the last council session before the summer. And you know, the framework sets the whole tone for the rest of the document. Why is this document important? The document's important because we've used it to win some important kind of ethics and principles in planning here in the District of Columbia. For example, the McMillan battle that's been going on for a while now. We use the comp plan to go to court and say, hey, the zoning commission, which is 5 unelected people, nobody from east of the river, that you know, approves these major projects. We call them displacement projects because they're luxury corporate-driven projects. That McMillan project we took to court, and the court sided with us because we relied on policies in the plan that said, hey, you're supposed to consider gentrification. You're supposed to consider environmental impacts, social impacts, health impacts, these sort of things. They didn't do it. So the court said, kicked it back to the zoning commission, said you better do it. Now, how they did it later on is a whole other story, because they tried to go through the process again. The point is, though, is that it's a powerful book for us to use in these fights. It's got a lot of great policies in it. The first chapter, though, the framework chapter, really does set up the rest of the book, and that's what we've been grappling with for 2 years. This coalition, you'll see on your table, and maybe there's not enough copies, share if you can, or maybe the tables can share inter-table extra copies. But we have this resolution that was created by this coalition over, I think, about 5 months' time. We wordsmithed this and voted on this. I don't know where the date is on it. As of June 5th, 2018. So last summer we made this our roadmap to how we will approach the framework element and what we want to see in the framework element. Does everybody have the resolution? All right, if not, just maybe if there's some extra on the table, like right here, we could pass it around.
Oh, there's some extras.
Some extra. You got it. Look at it. All right, so this is, you know, it's pretty basic. It's a one-pager, 7 points, right? And so what I wanted to do today was just give everybody a heads up about where we are. Did we win these points in the framework amendments, right? Who is really handling this at the council? It's our chairman, Bill Mendelson. He really wants to control control this process. And he's done that. He's hired somebody specifically in his staff to deal with this. We as a coalition we've been working with the key staff and the council members who have taken a real liking to the comp plan suddenly and are trying to amend it and get the policies right. So this is Julia Koster in Phil Mendelson's office, and David Menny and Brianne Mayhew's office. They seem to be really tuned in, and we've been meeting with them to kind of go through these points and see how they would actually, what they would look in narrative form in the framework. So I'll just go through it, and this, by the way, is just kind of how some of the language we took from the resolution and try to put into the actual policies in the framework, okay? But let's just go through these real quick. The maps, there's key maps with our comp plan that predict the future of how the city will develop over the next 20 years, right? They're called the future land use map and the generalized policy map. We have a lot of work to do there, folks, still, before October 8th. They are, through just a couple of words, redefining the maps and pushing everything higher in density. Particularly the medium density commercial designation is now going to be high density. So if you think you're going to only have, 6, 7-story buildings in your area because you think you're in a medium density area, it's actually going to be 12-story buildings. And that much more luxury and that much more displacement pressure. Okay? So we have to work on that. They're not budging on that right now, I'll tell you that. And that's because that's where the value is. That's where the money is for the developers. We were asking that we should get rid of the shoulds and the mays and start bringing in the shalls and musts, right? Make these directives. There's been some of that, not enough, but there's been some of that, and I think we'll get more into that in the later chapters where we really get down to nitty-gritty policies that require what we want them to require in these new developments. The term equity, particularly racial equity, that's point 3. There's a real problem here, right? So we're up against this coalition called the Smart Growth, right? Smart Growth Community and Greater Washington. They just say build more, right? Build more around transportation centers, more and more and more. They don't ever take a break and say, for whom? Who is all this for? And when you start looking at it, around the transportation centers, if you're wealthy, single, and white, then you get to live in this livable, walkable neighborhood. But otherwise, you don't. So that's why we emphasize we need to bring equity to this. If this stuff's going to get built anyway, we need it so that it's for families, for all sorts of incomes, particularly the ones who are folks who are vulnerable to displacement. And so what do we want on that? Well, the smoke is still out there, the dust is settling, but it sounds like they're going to bring racial equity into the principles of the plan. So that will give us a strong foothold to say, whenever these projects come around, how is this meeting that principle of racial equity? Because I think it will be pretty obvious if it's not, right? So I think we can count that as a star, but we'll update you. I think next week we'll have more clarity from the people we've been working with in the council. Project impact assessment requirements. Carl Racine most recently has been arguing in court against us, saying that project impacts don't matter. Just talk about the benefits. And he has won. Believe it or not, the court has been captured by the executive, and Carl Racine has won that foothold, which really hurts us because we are talking about project impacts. When you build a giant box of 500 new luxury units, all the existing affordability in the area is going to be challenged. People who are vulnerable to displacement will be displaced. So when they say build more and all of that, we're saying, okay, you want to build more, but you have to look at the impact of that build more posture, right?
What is the citation, or what's the case called that he's fighting with you on?
Sharon Cole versus DC Zoning Commission. Sharon Cole is on Benning Road. She's an elder, DC native. She's lived on Benny Road for a long time. And they want to put, I call it the Domino Project. It's at 7th and Benny Northeast. It's going to be the first one in a line of new condos there.
The C-O-L-E, Coles.
C-O-L-E, yep. And we're still pushing, though, with her to try to fight that, but it's tough. But so where are project impacts now in what we've gotten? Well, Bill, to his credit, has emphasized project impacts. The problem is it's been pinholed into a very discrete part of the plan that talks about land use change areas. But the whole city's changing. So we want that project impacts up in the broader principles. As a general framework for any project, we should be considering how it impacts our neighbors, right? Does that make sense? So we have to push for that still. That's something, it's in there, but we have to push for it to be moved as a general principle. Does that make sense in what I'm saying? So we're winning that, but we got to locate it up higher in the framework. Land value recapture, 0.5. There's kind of we're not there yet. Alyssa Silverman seemed to tune into this, but we're not seeing the rubber hit the road yet in terms of actual policy in the framework, or at least a mention. What is land use? What is land value recapture? That is, right now, let's say a developer can build up to 4 stories on a lot, and then they go to the zoning commission and they double that. They can build 8 stories. Well, that's all our air rights. That's ours. That the zoning commission entitled away. Those another 4 stories, right? So the question is, what are we getting for giving away those extra 4 stories, right? That's the land value recapture. It's old news. It's been around since the 90s. We never adopted it in the city, but major cities around the nation and the world have said, yeah, like, hey, quid pro quo. We're going to give you this. What are we getting in return? Land value recapture. Where are we at on that? It's not in the framework right now. So we have to push for that. So these are things we'll follow up with an email encapsulating all these points that you can then contact your council member, your ANC, and your mayor about. But these are where we got to work. Expand resident engagement and DC council oversight in the plan. So we've won a little bit of this. There's another 900 pages to go, right? We're just dealing with that first chapter right now. So those 900 pages, initially, OP was just going to drop it on us. We're going to have to fend for ourselves. They're still going to do that, but Phil Mendelson, we won from him at least, that he would have individual hearings at least, or at least a couple of hearings on the different chapters that might follow next. We're going to have to push more for that, because having 15 chapters when we've dealt with 1 chapter for 2 years, suddenly now we're going to have to deal with 15 other chapters in a very short timeline. It's not going to be suitable for ANCs, for civic groups, for us, right? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, so we got to push for that. And then the last point is emphasize small area planning. There is a whole section now in the comp plan amendment Bill has brought forward that talks about small area planning. We are in support of small area planning because it allows neighborhoods to determine their own futures for their own neighborhoods on their own, right? Ideally. Now, doesn't mean OP can do, have some hidden meetings here and there and count some 5 people here and 10 people there and say, oh, we had the meetings and this is now your plan. We're going to have to make sure to track that and be part of that and get as many people involved, right? And demand that they do not door knocking, flyers, and not just some email on a listserv that maybe you see, maybe you don't, right? So, but the concept of small area planning is in the framework, so we want that. So we've won a few points. Right now it's still pretty weak. There's conversations happening with key staff in the council. They seem to get our positions, but we need to solidify them between now and October 8th before the second vote. So next week, when we get an update from this council staff about where we are about our specific asks, we'll be able to write it up, a report for everybody, and then have an action plan before October 8th. Calling council members, hitting them up by email, going to visit them. So can I get commitments from folks to do that? Will you call your council members?
Yes.
With a game plan? Will you
Yes.
email your ANC? Will you go with us down to the council building?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Any questions about where we're at with the framework vis-a-vis our resolution? Nick?
I want you to give an example of the small area planning that we're hoping to see realized. In my neighborhood, Masonic Temple at 16th and S Street is planning a large development, 150-unit apartment house on their own property. And we have started a campaign to say that we didn't have sufficient consultation with this, and it is in a historic district where the height of the building is too high, it is too big, and it's going to interfere. There should be impact studies, and it's going to hide the back end of this magnificent temple. So the neighbors would like to hold on and hold back some of this huge development, and so we have filed a lawsuit in the D.C. Superior Court. We'll have our first hearing is the 27th of September. And
Where is it? Has everybody come?
D.C. Superior Court, you know the address?
500 Indiana.
There you know all about it.
Well, why I bring this up, it is a small instance in our area of how this could have been changed or different. Even though it is property owned by the Masons, the community should have a lot to say in it. We would like to see a park.
By the way,
Really
the
want to see.
property has been tax exempt for more than 20 years. And they have changed the subdivision line so that they can build this. And they have violated, based on what we can see, quite a few of the standards that have existed in the district. So Nick is part of the organization I talked about.
And this is Diane Quinn, she's on our board of directors.
Yeah.
We need to form associations, and we're hoping that Parisa will take up.
Hi, I'm in a meeting right now.
All right, any other questions on the framework? Any other questions? John?
Could you talk a little bit more about how the position of our of Carl Racine relates to, he's won in court,
Yeah.
but you were saying that the idea of impact is still something we're negotiating with Mendelsohn?
Yes, we are. Well, the whole purpose of zoning is actually to protect people, right? So the fact that Carl Racine is taking a position anathema to the fundamentals of zoning is mind-blowing. I mean, it shows that our independent OAG has lined up behind the developer class as equally with the mayor.
He wants to be there.
Maybe so. And so, but that's a real problem for us because he's supposed to be our attorney.
And that would be a good thing to bring up with Mendelsohn when we email him.
Yes, yes, okay. So what does project impacts mean? We talked about it, right? Hey, who in the area is vulnerable to displacement from this giant luxury box? How many cars is it going to bring in? The Macmillan, Grace McLean just put together a synopsis about how terribly poor the laws are.
Yeah, environmental health regulations that are just being completely ignored along with, many others, but especially environmental health impact.
Environmental health impact would be another project impact assessment we would expect from DOH, right? And I know Ambrose Lane Jr. He's been working on this, right? I mean, these are critical things. People are getting sick and dying from this construction, and not even just after it's built. How about during? So not only do we face displacement, but now we got to deal with years of pounding, dust, noise. I mean, trucks tearing up our streets and are disturbing us. I mean, so it's like they're softening up these communities before the ultimate displacement. People just get fed up. And so we should be compensated. And that's where the project impact assessments would allow us to at least have a conversation. How do we mitigate all this dust? Okay, if this dust comes over, what's our remedy? Are you going to pay us money to deal with our lung issues afterwards? I mean, these are real things that the city has foregone in this complete drive for their developer friends and their profits at our expense. So the project impact stuff is really, really important. Please, whenever you see your council member or any council member, say, look, these projects are impacting us. We need to assess them when they're being discussed. And just keep hammering that with them. And then we got to get that in the framework. All right, if there's no other questions, yes, sir.
ran across something maybe a few months ago, a year ago. Somebody building houses over the top of row houses in this lake. Not
Pop-ups.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
Pop-ups, pop-backs.
Me, just me, I'm just that make about my sisters or milk butter. Who would want to?
I mean, it's money, and it's short-term at our expense again, right? Because look at the type of construction that's going on in this city, where the housing that was built 100 years ago was meant to last, obviously, right? Then they're putting these plywood, plastic things on top and on the side, and I mean, this stuff isn't going to last. Not with the climate change. I mean, it's going to turn disastrous.
Yes.
And it's going to be at our expense, our city's expense.
That's the point I'm making. You can own a house here, but you can't own the land, so anybody can pop up with a house on top of your house.
I mean, I don't know about popping up over your house.
No.
That's how they build them. They build them here on top of the road.
I mean, we're at a very unique time. The money is driving all this, and the developers aren't from DC. They don't give a shit about our city. They just drop the stuff and go. And so we're having to deal with it, and that's why we have a government, right? To be in the go-between and say, hey, we gotta pull this in.
Hi, I'm Jillian. As Parisa said, I am. I'll actually like a solid 2 months as of tomorrow. So my job at Empower will be focusing on the Carmel School over in Ivy City, but also the comp plan work. So I'm going to be leading y'all in an activity for the comp plan. So there actually is like, have y'all been able to look through the comp plan? Because this is it. So it's literally about 1,000 pages. And we do need help looking through all of this documentation so we can make sure that the city council doesn't make amendments that will weaken the language to make it easier for developers to slip and slide in and further displace the rest of us. So for this activity, we're going to be breaking down by our area elements. Does everyone know which area element they live in? Okay. So does everyone have today's meeting agenda? Okay, so on the back, this is a map of the area elements, and there are about 10 of them. They actually cross ward boundaries, so 8 wards, but 10 area elements. So quite possibly, the ward boundaries actually might shift with the next comp plan. So has anyone been able to locate where they live yet on the map? No. Okay. All right, well, I will tell y'all where I live in terms of my area element. So I actually live in Bloomingdale. Somehow Bloomingdale is Ward 5, even though it's in Northwest. But even though it is a part of Ward 5, it actually sits in the Mid-City area element. If you live in Eckington, that is also Mid-City, even though it's in Northeast.
Columbia Heights?
Columbia Heights falls under Mid-City. Actually, if you shout out your neighborhood, I actually might know off the top of my head.
Which Ward 8?
Ward 8. Ward 8 is divided by the lower Anacostia waterfront, far southeast and far west, far southwest, but also some parts of far northeast. This part right here is far southeast. Anacostia, Congress Heights, Washington Highlands, far southeast. Anyone else?
Far northeast and southeast takes in stuff like, it takes over like Fair Lawn, different places.
Yeah. So it's pretty extensive. Has everyone been able to figure out the areas yet?
Fort Totten is where?
Fort Totten, I believe, might fall under Rockford East. So some parts of Upper Northeast fall under Rockford East. I think those parts are generally the Ward 4 sections that branch over that way.
Where's Adams Morgan?
Like 20 minutes.
Mid-City.
So can we just show us hands for each one, because we're going to split up.
Okay. So we understand we might... Stronghold. Upper Northeast. Let's see. So, Ward 5, Most of Ward 5, if not all, is Upper Northeast. Okay. So can I get a show of hands of everyone who has figured out their area element? Perfect. So we are now going to split up based off the area element. So I'm going to have...
Union Temple.
Oh, sorry. That makes more sense. Okay, so can I get a show of hands for folks who are in the Upper Northeast area elements? Okay, so can y'all group up? Because
Wait, they'll group up next, but go, do each one.
okay. Sorry, y'all. So Upper Northeast. Can I get 2 hands?
Okay, we're gonna have people group up after we go through all of this. I'm gonna designate one
My bad,
person
y'all.
with the material, and then you're gonna set up a table in just a second. Let's do this part first.
Okay. Rock Creek East.
Rock Creek East, okay. So you guys are gonna group up in just a second.
Rock Creek West.
Wait, I might be the only one.
Okay, all right.
Can I see that? Because I'm not sure which
Ward is that?
Near Northwest.
Thank you.
So near Northwest. Central Washington.
Thank you.
No one from Central Washington? Okay.
Okay.
Lower Anacostia Waterfront.
Now I know where I am.
Most of it's Ward 6. Like along south, like
Southeast over.
Navy
yeah, Navy Yard.
Across the bridge.
Let's see, Capitol Hill. Yes.
Capitol Hill.
2.
Far northeast and southeast. Far northeast and southeast. And then there's far,
like what?
What you mean?
like Deanwood would be far northeast and southeast.
Fairlawn all the way
Yeah,
over
but
to
Fairlawn
Deanwood.
is also far southeast.
Fairlawn to Deanwood.
Far southeast and southwest.
So that's Congress Heights, Washington Highlands, Berry Farm,
Anacostia.
We Anacostia, which is Ward 8.
Yeah, so that's far southeast and southwest.
That's me.
Okay.
Oh, and I forgot Mid-City.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay.
You're excited.
Okay, so